Okay. It is 5:32 p.m. Central Daylight Time on July 24th. I say that because I'm in Phoenix right now. And I'll call the meeting to order. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. I'll try it one more time. Are you guys seeing the agenda?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that's curious. I don't see it on my side. Well, I will trust that you guys can see it. Can everybody hear everything fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're good now. Okay, we have full quorum. Everyone is here tonight. That is great. That's exactly what we needed. First item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
second.
Thanks, John and Chuck. If there's no discussion, all in favor of approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda under regular business is the executive director's report.
Good evening, everyone. I've invited Kim Brabbitts to come to the meeting today to talk about staffing patterns because I know that we've had some concern about our staffing with lack of staff and staff retiring or resigning and terminations and things like that. We know we're not at a full budgeted staff pattern. So I wanted Kim to come and talk about what our staffing pattern looks like and what it should look like based on best practices for homeless shelters. So Kim's gonna start this off. Can I share my screen, Charlie?
Yeah, you should be able to. I stopped sharing mine.
Can everybody see that?
Looks like it's loading up. There, I see it.
Where's the beginning? There we go.
Good evening, everybody. So my name's Kim. For those of you I haven't met, I think I've met most of you. I'm the deputy director. So I did a little bit of research. I've worked with shelters for quite some time. So I did some research on rationale for staffing and best practice for staffing. My research comes from the Alliance to End Homelessness, which is probably one of the best resources for keeping up with best practice and just kind of changes and information regarding homelessness. So we're going to start out kind of with the rationale for staffing. Our staffing in the homeless shelter is so extremely important because it not only ensures safety for our staff, but also for our guests. It ensures program fidelity and trauma-informed care. Our direct service advocates are frontline staff. They're the ones that are on the floor every day working with our guests. I have to give them props. I've been working with them recently quite a bit, and it's a lot of work. They ensure adequate supervision, a lot of de-escalation, and then guest support. So if you've been to the village or the shelter during check-in time and in the mornings, you will see what we mean by guest support and just making sure that they have everything they need and are set up for shower times and laundry times. Our case management staff really facilitate all of the housing plans and service connections. They start working with our guests
There
early.
is a issue with the audio. Are you all having,
I'm not having any issue with the audio.
it's like being choppy or
I,
am I the only one?
you're sounding a little choppy, Chicani. But Kim's coming in loud on my end.
Continue. Okay, our case management staff facilitate housing plans and service coordination. We start, you'll see as we go through the presentation, I have divided that into kind of a mid-reach case management position, which helps gather vital documents such as their driver's license, social security cards, birth certificates, all the things that we expect them to have before they move into more intensive case management. And then our kitchen staff, of course, ensures proper nutrition, timing and hygiene standards. As we open the pallets out back, pallet 24, we're really looking now at how best practice is going to be to feed those that are outside and then increase the number of meals that we are providing. And then staff ratios are based kind of on time of day, guest volume, and the shelter service level. So again, intensive versus mid-level. The first that we looked at is during waking hours, and for our shelter, waking hours are 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I divided this up and based on best practice from the Alliance to End Homelessness, it should be 15-1. And so I did a little bit of math at the bottom. If you'll see the 125 guests, as if we're at capacity inside the shelter. That will be soon our 90-day program and our 30-day program. And so those will be what we're looking at capacity with the 125. 50 are the guests at the village. That is 3 staff, so 8 for capacity at the shelter, 3 at the village. And then at 173 guests, that includes the guests that would be in the pallets out back, as well as the capacity within the shelter without special use permit. But that's what it would look like during weather emergency. It also looks like that on Sundays. We allow night by night guests to stay on Sundays because there's no bus. And so they really have no place to go. And what that's gonna look like, we're kind of still working out. But it gives you an idea of how many staff are recommended for that many guests, and that's 12 per shift.
And now that 12 count, for instance, includes DSA, includes case management and,
That's just for DSAs.
okay.
So, and we can talk a little bit if you have more questions about that, I can explain. So during sleeping hours, which is our 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., it jumps up to 25-1. For the shelter at capacity, including those out back, so the pallet 24, it would be 173 guests would be approximately 7 DSAs would be best practice. At the village, 52, and we run about 2 currently. I moved on, in my research, I get a little excited about this sort of stuff. It's my thing. So I started looking at case management, staffing needs by guest count and also service level. So our first is the 48 guests that will be out back in our pallet 24. Those will be night by night guests. And what I mean by mid-level case management is ensuring residency, which is the first thing that will happen when they check in, but also meeting with them to make sure that they do have their vital documents ready. So, and then preparing referrals for either our 30-day program, 90-day program, or the village based on the goals and the aspirations of the guests that are coming to us night by night. And one of the things that we ask is, what does housing look like to you? And that really guides us in making those referrals to appropriate programs. So for the village, I did a little bit to look at kind of where realistically we might be. So for 50 guests, I bumped it to 20-1 for intensive case management for the village. That looks like 2 case managers, which is what we have right now. It's actually, they carry a caseload of about 25, but that ebbs and flows as we have people exit. It hopefully into permanent housing or into other programs, including our night by night program. And then in our continuous stay, I again bumped that up a little bit so that we could look realistically at what we have versus what we need. For 125 guests, that would be our full capacity for continuous stay. That would include our 30-day program and our 90-day program. So as we start looking at what we will need for that 30-day programming, it will include 6 case managers.
And could you just give us a little, like, help us understand what will be covered in a 30-day program and what will be covered in a 90-day program?
Again, so for our 30-day program, one of the we're starting with the design of that program, but I've designed a checklist to see kind of where people are. So our 30-day program really looks at where are you at in your life right now, and how quickly can we help you, or you can help yourself, and we can guide you in meeting your goals. And that can be whatever housing looks like to them. And our hope is during that 30-day program that we can work intensively with them and get that turned around within 30 days. A lot of that's gonna depend on affordable housing, I'm just gonna be really honest. But we have a lot of guests that come to us that are either first-time homeless, already have income in place, just need help, guidance through either applying for vouchers or looking for apartments, or credit scores is a big one, so really working with landlords to navigate that. But we do have folks that I think will be very successful in that 30-day program. We also have the 90-day program, which we've been running for quite some time. And looking at where guests are, the determining factor of that is the probability of us being able to get that person housed within 90 days. Now that housing could look like, and for us right now, a lot of it is working with the VA. We've been working with Ruben and helping some people getting VA housing and get their VASH voucher, which has been extremely successful for us. Permanent housing. It can also look like reuniting with their family, which we find surprisingly a lot, both in our 90-day program and at the village. I think a lot of times the guests that we have maybe alienated members of their family. And so in their journey to gain sobriety and to get stable, they're able to repair some of those relationships and self-resolve back to family. So that's an important thing. And for me, it's been a little surprising at how often we've been able to do that, especially when it pertains to the village. It can also look like, for some of our guests, supported housing and supported nursing facilities as some of our guests age, and of course, some have long-term substance use issues and mental health issues. So navigating that system with them within 90 days.
This is Charlie. I wanted to ask, would it be appropriate to kind of refer to the village as a third continuous stay program?
It is very much so. I was gonna back up to that. That's a 6-month program, and it is considered a continuous stay. Kind of broke it out here, but in the end, it will be combined. But for the village, that's a 6-month program. So really looking at if people need a little bit more time and more support to get them through navigating some of the systems, especially mental health and substance use systems, to get them stable and start moving them towards permanent housing. A lot of our case management focuses on what are your goals? What would you like to see, and what does permanent housing look like to you? The role of our case managers are to help navigate systems, but also to give options and to help guests verbalize what consequences of their choices would be. So here's, here's choice one, going to a recovery center. What would that look like, and what would be the consequences of that? Not going to a recovery center, what are the consequences of that? And really helping them think that through, because ultimately it's their choice. All we can do is give them options. But I think it's very important that we remember that it's also our responsibility and our goal to help them navigate and look at what the consequences of each choice is.
And then
So-
also, just for clarification, the bar on the top, the 48 guests, that's the pallet 24 project, or is that something else?
Yes, that's pallet 44, or 24, and go ahead.
I was also gonna just ask if you could help us understand where the winter emergency shelter would fit into this diagram.
Winter emergency shelter, with case management, it really does not change our count of the number of case managers that we're gonna need. It will change the number of staff that we need on a continual basis for the direct service advocates or DSAs, because they're the ones on the floor. And we'll look at that a little bit more, but for case management, honestly, that does not necessarily change the number of case managers that we need. It does hopefully change the number that we engage to get into some of our programming, but it won't necessarily change the number of case management.
Charlie, I want to speak to winter emergency. One of the things that we're gonna do different is that we're gonna have a total capacity of 173, and we're gonna work with community partners to open overflows for winter emergency or weather emergency in the winter. So that's what we're gonna start working with community partners to staff those things. That if you notice in our last contract, the city is stepping back from that, and we're gonna be doing that. So we'll have a capacity of 173, but anything over that capacity, we'll do overflows, and we'll start with First United, and we'll work with other partners to staff places like that. So
And we started.
Oh, boy.
I know, yay, John. But we've also started having conversations with Mercedes on recruiting volunteers and how we would strategically place staff to help run those programs.
I got a quick question on that. So what's different then is who's organizing the overflows?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's
But
right.
also what's different is we have 48 additional beds. So
Right.
think about that. When we had weather emergency this year, we had the 140. And that was our total capacity. And then we started going to overflow.
Actually, it was was it 140 or was it 160?
140.
It was 140.
It is our
So
second.
125
Is the
was
normal.
normal and
140.
140. And
Yeah.
this year,
We'll have one.
normal would be 173.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's what's the
And,
difference.
and then no intent to solicit a special use permit
No,
for something more than
we'll
170.
be at capacity. No.
Okay.
So, and then the next slide, as I was looking up, our, direct service staffing, I looked also at kitchen staffing, because our meals are going to increase. And I have to say, our kitchen does an excellent job with the number of meals that we're serving right now. We provide 3 meals a day to our continuous stay program. And that includes now our day programming. So we have people that are staying during the day just to go to classes. So that's up the number of meals that we are providing at lunch by about 15, I think is the average number that are in class. I'm looking at Megan,
Yeah,
she helps to coordinate that. So, but we're looking towards the future. So for standard day-to-day, not including night-by-night lunch, we would need approximately 9 staff. And then for 123, which would be weather emergencies and Sundays, which would be a total of 3 meals, that would be 12. And this is, of course, best practice, ideal situation, but it will also allow us to think about how we're going to provide the night-by-night lunches and dinners. One of the things that is in here, and I need to make sure that I'm reminding everybody of, is the meals that we provide to the village. Because we also provide 3 meals a day to the village. Questions about that, or? So this is just a summary page of the best practice. Looking at 125 waking guests and sleeping guests, and just a total of staff per day, including the shifts that we would need. So waking staff, we have 2 shifts. And so, looking at what that would look like, we have sleeping staff, and that is across the village and across, our continuous stay programs at the main shelter. So I've broken out the village. We're pretty close on the village, except for, I think, on the waking staff. We usually staff about 3 in the evenings, and best practice would be 6, but total per day would be 8. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. And then Sunday and weather emergency shelter, we're bumping up. So we would, at the shelter, village will not change, because village would stay at full capacity at 50. Also using some of the cabins at the village if we need to for rolling over some of those overflows for winter shelter. But at full capacity, it's 173 waking guests and 117 sleeping guests.
I wanna clarify the, Sunday and weather emergency at full capacity. When we're not at full capacity and we go into a weather emergency, we're gonna fill every available bed up to that 173. So if our normal programs are not at capacity, we will be able to bring people in just to occupy those beds during these emergencies. That's why that's important to still put it on there. So normally we would staff programs by doing referrals and case management reviews about who is eligible for what program, but when we're in weather emergency, every available bed will get filled with people that need beds. So that's why that's important to add that in there.
And how many days did we have weather emergency this past winter?
I don't know.
I can tell you exactly.
Forever. John and I.
We have the number somewhere, but I don't have it on my
You
head.
know what? No, honestly, I can tell you exactly how many nights we needed overflow. And it was 41. That started on January 5th, that ended on March the 8th. And in between January 5th and March the 8th, it was 41 that they were over 140. There was 2 stints in there where, because of the severity of the weather, city shut down for 4 days.
Yeah.
You know, that we opened up regardless of what their number was. I didn't care what their number was for, these 6 days and these 4 days, whatever they were. That's included in the 41, in fairness. So technically, there may have been fewer than 41 that by the number required it, but that was the total in that period of time. I would just throw out, and you understand this, last year was January 5th. this year it could be December 17th, or it could be February 9th. I mean, when that threshold, because of the weather, is actually needed is dependent upon the weather.
Right, we had a few days in December that weren't quite as severe, and so we didn't get as many people in, but we're still considered winter emergency.
We started night by night about the 17th of November.
Mhm.
Something, so that sticks in my mind, is because of the temperatures that we started communicating every night from that point forward. What are your numbers? What are your numbers? So we were ready from November 17th. But last year, it didn't actually have to happen until, I think it was the 4th of January, that blizzard,
Yeah,
that blizzard hit. But,
it started
so-
us off on that. Yeah. Living with people, I know the guests very well, since they're emergency. So then I put together kind of a comparison, so this is our current staffing, so what we have now, and then best practice underneath. So, during waking hours, this is gonna include the village and the shelter, and where we are with staff. And then also direct service staff during sleeping hours, intensive case management, mid-level case managers. We're pretty much, I mean, I think we're close to on the mark on that. And then for kitchen staff, of course, we're below. Mid-level, I honestly believe with one of our case managers doing pallet 24, I think we're gonna be okay with that. Because a lot of those that are coming into our night by night program, we have already seen, we've established residency. And they started down that path of getting their vital documents. And that's important to us regardless of whether they're gonna go into a continuous stay program. Another thing that we really stress is where you keep your vital documents so that you have them, we're not having to replace them quite so often, and it doesn't put you at risk of identity theft. But you need those things to apply for anything. And so, that's our first step besides having a conversation and assessment. So this is kind of where we are now. I'm open to questions. I
Okay.
think, go ahead.
This is Charlie. I was gonna ask if the bar that represents best practice, is that based on assuming full capacity?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And where we are now is that we are backfilling positions that have left. We are running in the mornings, our minimum right now has been about 3, and that's only when we have office staff there to help. And we're struggling a little bit in the evenings. Michelle and I are filling in, we are backfilling those positions as people have gone back to school. But even then, I think we're nowhere near best practice, and for safety reasons, I have been somewhat concerned, especially during the waking hours.
Is there any chance the Alliance to End Homelessness might have some data to help, like benchmark our current staffing against other shelters?
I can certainly gather that information. I mean, one of the things I also do, I have a lot of different connections because I work for Catholic Charities for so long. And a great friend of mine works in Washington. And so they have not only Pallet Village, but they also run some tiny home like neighborhoods and a shelter. And so I've been on the phone with her quite a bit, looking at her staffing patterns and safety. One of the things that stands out to me is just having enough staff to cover the entire shelter to ensure safety at every entry point. And so that includes the warehouse, it will include pallet 24, as well as the 90-day and the women's night by night area.
So, tell me about partners and like I know Heartland Radak has a contract. How are partners doing with the case management? What's that look like to you all? I mean,
So-
obviously, we all know Bert Nash is having issues.
Yeah.
And
So for us, it's wraparound case management, and what, for me, best practice in case management is if someone comes in and they're working with another agency who's also providing services, then we really look at working in partnership, and that's been, has increased tremendously, and I think Misty's group with HRT has been a big part of that. And being able to look at, okay, from that referral, who is that individual working with? Getting a release of information for the other partnering agencies and working together to say, okay, what can we do next? That's been where I've seen great, success in that recently is with our VA program, trying to, house some of our folks with VA benefits. Ruben is awesome and that's, that's been helping a lot. But, yeah, you know, we've got Kelby who's on HRT, who helps with some of our placements for, substance use and treatment. So, I have seen, and I hope others have, more of a collaborative partnership with with other agencies so that we can really wrap around that person and they have support from many different areas. Radak comes to the center. I cannot praise Tyler enough, who is our peer support from Radak, who comes and meets with a lot of our guests. Kelby, of course, who has helped us tremendously in getting people into treatment lately. So we have partners and our day programming. We have a lot of people who are coming in and really getting to know our guests. Our guests are beginning to really trust those other agencies and trust us to know that we can work collaboratively without, I've been practicing for a long time, and this is a phrase you hear all the time, not everybody knowing my business, but also knowing that it's okay for us to share information in collaboration with them, and that it's in their best interest for us to help guide them as they choose, within their choices to move forward. Is that help?
Is all of that now interconnected through HMIS?
Yes, I
So-
think so one of the things that we've been doing for residency, we look at HMIS to see who everybody is working with, and if they have a history of other service providers. We've always had a release of information that they fill out for service providers during their interview or night by night when they come in and we talk with them. I think one of the areas that we see not in HMIS a lot, of course, is DD, the Willow, and then sometimes Bert Nash services. And Bert Nash serves not necessarily just Douglas County, so we don't always fall back on Bert Nash as being the only service provider to establish, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Other questions for me?
Thank you, Kim, that was wonderful.
You're welcome. I'm open for discussion with you.
Hi, Kim. I don't know if I'm coming through audibly. I wanted to thank you for the presentation and specifically compliment you on the emphasis on the collection of vital documents. And you made a point to tell that to us as a team, how much and how important that is for one of the clients to gain autonomy in life. So I wanted to testify that at the Lawrence Community Shelter, I too was able to get my Social Security, my birth certificate, documents from Texas, which was very difficult at the time. And so I'm very appreciative that is your priority and that you are making sure that folks are able to gain their identity in the Lawrence Community Shelter.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we're working with Connecticut, which is probably the hardest, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Kim, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
James,
Thanks.
other items you wanted to share?
No, I think that was it. for time constraints, what are y'all seeing on your screen? Cause I can't get this to get back to the Zoom, cause I,
Press escape. So I do have one question about how you staff the 40 days of emergency winter. We're not having all of that staff all of the year, right?
No, so last year, I will tell you, we don't meet the mark of what we need for our emergency. I mean, I had the sheriff's department picking me up and taking me home a few times. And I think I felt like I lived there, and I know John and Misty and her group felt the same way. It's who can come in. This year, I am going to, and James and I have talked about this, make sure that all of our staff know that they have to be there to assist, and that includes case managers. And that's not necessarily always been the case, because sometimes they close the main office area, if you will say, I consider us all working with, but that we will use our case management staff as part of that, because we struggled. I mean, there were times where there were 4 of us with 135 people, and it worked. I won't say it was not chaotic, but it was somewhat controlled chaos. And like I said, I think it was a successful winter.
Nobody died.
Nobody died.
I'll say that.
We didn't have, knock on wood. And no, we did not have any major catastrophes or major incidents, even like we've had recently during the winter time. And there were a lot of people in that shelter for consecutive days. And so I was very proud of my staff. I think our guests really fell into a pattern of the structure that we had set up. It wasn't perfect, but I think it went really well.
Okay. Any other questions? Then is Karen in the room?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I hadn't seen you yet, Karen. Let's go down then to the finance report. And do you want me to queue up some documents or?
Yes, but can we look at the financial report for June?
Okay. And I believe, whoops, not that one. Can everybody see it?
Nobody in here, we're all. I know it's hot outside, but it has to be. It's colder in here.
In control of this or not.
Everything's all the way at the bottom, isn't it? That is ridiculous. I
Can
mean,
you
I
guys,
know.
can you guys see the screen with the statements?
Yeah.
Okay.
We make it bigger. We make it.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll do the thing for others.
Where do you want me to go, Karen?
So let's go to page 3 of the document. So the reports page 2. Yep, you're right there. So we're on the statements of assets, liabilities, and net assets. Notice the no draft watermark. We are in the clear. I am done importing, transitioning us into 2025. The most significant thing here that I need to point out is one thing that I had forgotten is during our 2024 audit, we were converted into accrual basis. So 2025, we are accrual basis. We've been on accrual basis. But the significance of that comes about because we recognize grant revenue differently in an accrual basis accounting versus modified cash basis, which is where we came from. So that means that our federal grants that we had available to us, they were open, whether we reimbursed for it or not, they were recognized in 2024. So they were grant receivable in 2025. So as we get into the statements of revenues and expenditures, you'll see that there's a debit balance. We'll talk about it in a second, but there is, the grants are receivable, so we can't recognize them as revenue. Here, I've reversed the grant receivable so that we're not recognizing the revenue in this year, so we just have straight up receivable. So as of the end of June, we had $51,000 in revenue. So a lot of that is gonna be, or half of that, I should say, is gonna be the Douglas County invoicing that we do on a monthly basis at about $25,000, and then the rest are receipts that we had coming in. And so that also includes some checks that we may have received in June, but they weren't deposited until July. Okay, so we're looking good here. Total assets about 4.07 million, up from 3.32 million in June 2024. Cash and equivalents is 806,000, primarily in our insured cash sweep account. And again, we had negative balances for our operating and direct assistance accounts. Those represent outstanding checks that have not cleared. And so the majority of our funding is going to be in our insured cash sweeps. It doesn't mean that we are negative in those accounts, they're just outstanding because our peg balance is 0. So I'm probably gonna remind you of that every month. Our construction in progress is 175,000. That's representative of the work that's going on at PAL 24. Those will continue to increase. And then new to us account, new to all, not to me, but is the prepaid expenses. So construction in progress is a similar prepaid expense. But prepaid expenses in this regard on the asset sheet represents our advanced insurance payments. So it was more advantageous for us to pay our auto insurance for the full year in advance. So I'll be writing a journal entry to expense the monthly amount. So the majority of the expense is gonna be living in the prepaid on our asset sheet because it is still an asset at that point. So net assets right now at 3.68 million, minimal liabilities, which I mean are primarily the loan on the building. So we can go down to here, and then we have union dues payable now because again, timing differences, but that's representative, and then our 401k payable also, so. And accounts payable at the end of June, but yeah. Those are gonna be our current liabilities. Long-term liabilities would represent our loan again. And then current year earnings, which will be represented on our statements of revenues and expenditures, negative 88,337. So the first time this year that we're seeing a negative number. Not anything that I'm alarmed about. So do we have any questions on the statements of assets, liabilities, and net assets so far?
Now, when you were talking about the insurance as part of the prepaid expenses, are we then just having a monthly entry that allocates that to the insurance expense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I am reconciling that account, so I know exactly what the balance is in there. As part of my month-end standard operating procedures, is to go ahead and reconcile, okay, what are we prepaid, I'm adding to that. And then going in and making sure that the recurring journal entry that I've set up is correct with the amounts that I'm expecting, going back in and making sure that everything is fleshing out the way that it needs to. Okay, let's move on. So now we're moving on our statements of revenues and expenditures. This is a tired saying, June revenue has 60,000.6 versus 80,000.4. We are in a budget shortfall of 19,000.8. Year-to-date revenue is 1.94 million versus 2.23 million, 13% below target. So our private fundraising and foundation revenue are well below targets. We've been telling you all that.
Karen, did you
Um,
want me to, did you want me to go to the one that shows the budget variance, or I'm on the one that shows the change?
Between last year, would you all prefer to see that? The year-to-date versus budget, or right now it's showing, June 2025 to 24, and then January through June 25 and 2024.
I think the comparison of actual versus budget is probably a higher
Okay,
priority.
alright, so yeah, so let's go to the actuals versus budget. Alright, so down, down, down. We do, if you wanna scroll back up just slightly. Slightly similar, and stop. So in the events and fundraisers section, we have community auctions. It's something that I had mentioned previously. Community auctions is something that is no cost to us. It's 2 tables located in town. One of the tables is located at IHOP and the other is at True by Hilton Lawrence. Customers can come in and view the items and bid on them if they like, and so far we've received $1,667 for the year. I just got another check-in today, so that seems to be pretty good for not costing us anything, and you know, being it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship in that regard. It's, you know, the community auctions is getting money and then we're also benefiting from it too. So
Tell me that number again that you were saying,
for community auctions,
yeah,
$1,667. So it's in the events and fundraisers section. It's the last line. So in June, we recorded $514, and then year to date, $1,667. So it's been pretty good. I think we got most of our activity at the IHOP, right? So the IHOP is off of Iowa
okay,
Street.
now hold on just a second, so. I'm wanting to see if I'm looking at a different document.
It shouldn't be under budget, that amount, should it?
Well, so,
The
okay,
label says budget, but when Karen's discussing it, she's referring to it as the year to date.
I am, you are correct. Okay, so let me go back. I look on,
so what I'm seeing on this is saying that we've received year to date $500.
$514,000.
And we had in that timeframe budgeted, expected 10,000.
I think, okay, so for events and fundraisers overall, I recognize what I did now. Community auctions used to be just other events and fundraisers. That's where I have Megan coding the checks when they come into every auction. And that's where the budget line is, when I put it into 0. So for total events and fundraisers, our budget is $15,006 for the year. Through the end of June, it should be 1,667. We're below budget on that. But, and I apologize for misspeaking, but $514 is how much we've received from community auctions from those auctions around town. Does that make sense now?
So the budget for the year is $15,006, and we've earned so far 514.
All the events and fundraisers, and as we're painfully aware of, we've not held an event or fundraiser. Community action auctions is something that Megan actually found earlier this year, approached them, and again, at no cost to us, is putting on an auction for us that is benefiting us, but they are also making a little bit of money too.
Now again, so I want to make sure I understood what you were saying. Were you saying the $15,006 is for the entire, budgeted for the entire 2025 year, or just for the January through June period of 2025?
It should be for the whole year.
The heading says.
The heading is wrong. I want to apologize, and because the push was to make sure that these were out. I was finished. Wanted to get these reports to you, so the headings are wrong, they will be correct next month. The other thing that I wasn't able to do this month was split out the general supplies into more specific categories, as well as split out payroll, so that you guys could see how much we're spending on emergency shelter, which would primarily be the DSAs and operations in the village.
Okay, so going back again, so are you saying that what appears on this form in the January to June 2025 overall budget is actually the
For the
full
whole year.
year? So then, for instance, this would say that our donations individual, we were budgeting for the full year 50,000, 49,000, let's say 50. We've already in the first half of the year received 30,000, so we're well over budget. Is that correct?
We're still under budget. Under projected or expectations for this year. And a lot of that has to do with the timing. When I put the budget into zero, it was what we received at the end of 2024, what we projected for 2025 divided by 12. So they're equal amounts in zero. That was something I was gonna actually bring up after we talked about our financial statements to reforecast the remaining amounts of our budgets for the remainder of this year. If we wanted to adjust those amounts in zero.
I'm sorry, I am just still really confused about this information that we're receiving here. I don't believe I understand what you're saying. Let's just go a little bit further down to where it says grants, for instance, the number that I know we have involved, and that's the city of Lawrence. So if I understand what you're saying, that second column from the right, which was headed as January through June overall budget, is those numbers are actually the entire year of 2025. Then we've got something wrong here.
Actually, on that example, makes more sense if it was what was budgeted for January through June.
Yeah, I agree.
All
Yeah,
right,
Okay.
that the heading's actually correct.
I do believe the heading is actually correct and that it does not represent
The whole year,
the whole year.
cause we know we're gonna get more than.
We're gonna get another
1.7.
1.7 from the city.
Yeah, we know that, so that can't be right.
Okay.
So it looks like what we're missing is columns that correspond to the full budget for the whole year.
Whole year.
But we don't need that, really. I mean,
No.
that's immaterial to this information.
Okay, so I agree, the headings are correct. I'm wrong,
So this tells us where we're at.
yes. As of June 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense.
Karen, are you able to correct the format so that it includes another column with the
For the whole
annual
year,
budget?
yes.
Okay.
Would you like that now, or?
No, I think we just need to move on for tonight, but I do think that, before we can make any, accept these reports, we need to feel confident that they're formatted and everything's correct.
Okay. As an aside, Charlie, Chuck, and Christina, as part of our executive board, you have invitations for read-only access to zero.
Yep, I got that. I was gonna discuss that in our exec committee report.
I guess if. A lot of this information makes sense and aligns. I mean, it gives us an indication of where we're seeing the gaps. So for instance, I'm gonna say on page 10, where we're talking about gross profit, it's indicating that compared to where we thought we would be at budget at this point, we're down $290,000. But at the same time, that's offset to some extent by reduction in expenses, which was what had also been noted. The things, just looking at these questions that come to mind for me include a substantial increase in our expense for the first half of the year in accounting and legal fees. So,
I'm sorry. So,
we were running a little over 100% over budget on accounting and legal fees, which I'm trying to remember what that all incorporates.
Okay, so we recently.
What page are we on so I can scroll to that?
Page 12, so if you type in page 12 on the. Where you can get to it on Adobe at the top where you
I got
can
it.
flip the page.
Right here, accounting and legal fees.
Okay, yeah. If you look in June 2025, it says 15,310. That is our current bill for our 2024 audit. With Cummins, Kaufman and Stringley. We also paid 2023 audit earlier this year. That was not accrued for in their final audit for 2024. So that is why it is over. It was not accounted for in 2024.
Now, a question when we're under is insurance, still just a touch further down on that same page. Where we budgeted 27,500. And now we've broken with this year, it looks like we've broken a lot of the insurance down into other separate packets almost. Property and casualty, commercial, but still our expenses for insurance are about half of what we had budgeted. Did we score that good of a deal when we rearranged our insurance this year?
Most of our insurance for, so the insurance year starts at the end of June. So we just started our new insurance year, June 28th, 2025 through June 28th, 2026. So I just mentioned auto insurance. That was for the year. It was gonna be about $1,500, $1,500 or $1,600 cheaper if we paid upfront. Not including, they had like $6 monthly fee for that. So James and I discussed go ahead and pay it upfront so we could save that money and use it elsewhere. But as far as commercial insurance, the package property, casualty and liability, right now they are billing quarterly. West Bend Mutual Insurance billing quarterly about $8,000. It's about $32,000 for package property, casualty and liability. And then another $8,000 for auto insurance. The package property, casualty and liability includes the EPLI, the board member property, obviously, and then we also needed to have bond insurance for 401k, and that amounted to about $140 for the year, which also started back in April. And also just wanting to acknowledge that yeah, the commercial insurance lines needed to be packaged together. So again, it's a formatting issue. I will get that corrected. I apologize.
There's no, but I mean, I think the point is that it's impossible for us to tell, is it more or less? cause there's like no budget line.
Yes,
And I think that's what your point is it's really hard for us to tell.
Apples to apples.
Yeah, apples to apples.
yes,
We can build it from what we see here, but yeah.
yes.
Don't make me do the math.
I apologize for making you do that, but I mean. I've made quite a lot of changes to try and really give us a clear picture of where our dollars are going so that we can control spending where we can. And identify where things are going. I thought, particularly in the repairs and maintenance section, which is on page 11. Rather than having it just dumped in one pile, I thought it would be important for us to understand how much we were spending on fire safety equipment maintenance. We've spent. The line says 8113 here, we've actually spent more than that, anything above $2,500 becomes a capital improvement on our property. So that becomes an asset that goes to the asset sheet. So I felt it was important for us to demonstrate how much we're making sure that the shelter has proper safety in there. Another line that I had included that should be in this section is kitchen repairs. We keep calling Lippert out to fix the walk-in cooler. So I feel like that's important so that, you know, at some point we can start fundraising, so we can just say, hey, you know, let's really fix this walk-in cooler and get it taken care of. You know, I feel like there's certain things that having this much detail really helps us to do. But I also acknowledge that having it not in the section that it belongs in is not helpful to you all. Ideally, again, looking at this repairs and maintenance section, for the facility repairs and maintenance line is where we budgeted for. You'll see that through June, I put 49,998. And so all of those categories were within that section. You could tell, okay, that's what we budgeted originally on that line for the year. And then here's all the subcategories that I've made for this year that we know where the money is going. And you can see without having to do the math, we have to do the math today, but without having to do the math, that this was the intention that I had in doing the reports this way. So again, I apologize.
No, it's fine, it's just, yeah, I mean,
And the reality of that picture is, for that section, we spent 16,000 less than what we had budgeted in those categories, so that's
that's good.
that is good, and that's where, you know, if we look at what we had as our expected revenue for the first 6 months, yeah, we're down 290,000. But since we have not had the expense of a lot of the items that we had anticipated in the budget, our overall difference at the bottom line that is that I mean, it's not insignificant, but we're 94,000 below where we thought we'd be.
Yeah, and
for the 6
it's
months.
not as bad as we thought, right? Not
Yeah.
as bad as what we thought.
Yeah.
I will say, if you scroll back up one page, payroll section, tight, it's all there. That will change next month because again, I would like to flesh it out so that we all know and the public is aware of where exactly we are. It's our biggest expense. People don't seem to understand why it's such a big expense. I can say all day till I'm blue in the face that it's for safety and cleanliness reasons. We wanna make sure that we have the staff that's appropriate there to make sure that the environment is conducive to healing and to trying to become in more permanent housing. But another thing that I had just thought of is that we don't have any highly compensated employees on our payroll. And what that means is we don't have anybody that is paid $250,000 or more. That seems to be a misconception in the community. So I feel like if it's fleshed out that here's what we're spending on operations, here's what we're spending on emergency services, and here's what we're spending at the village, people will have a better understanding of, yes, this is actually going to helping the people that are coming into the shelter. This is not just, we're not paying fat cats here. There's no money to be made doing this work. I have to tell you that. I will be honest, and I say that I left public accounting. I took a pay cut to come here and do this. So there's no money to be made here. We are not doing this because this is a money-making scheme. We're doing this because we're passionate. And
Well, and I mean, I totally get all of that, but the money is real.
yeah,
Right.
for sure, for
And-
sure.
And what we can't do is spend more money than we have.
Right.
And so when we, I loved your presentation, but what I need to see next is, here's where we're currently staffed, this many DSAs, they work these shifts, this many kitchen staff, they work these shifts.
I can do that very.
We think pallet 24 is coming on in October, November, I don't know,
August,
right? Oh,
end of August.
you
Yeah,
guys are funny.
I have time notes.
And so,
We'll call it September.
Okay.
right, and so we need to know when do we, when is it, do you have to hire people? Like, I mean.
No, we're working on, Karen and I are gonna get together, we're gonna come up with our projected budget. And when doing that, our projected budget for 26, and doing that, we're gonna look at what we're gonna start putting on the block to downsize so we can try to get as close to zero as possible by the end of the year. So that's what we're working on. So
Right.
we haven't started doing that because some of the things we see, we are coming in under budget on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But like you said, we are recognizing that our revenue is not where it should be, but we haven't started that process yet. So we are working on it.
Yeah, and it's just,
And we will have that to the exec team before the next board meeting, and then
right,
it
'cause
will be presented at the next board meeting.
we don't want you
Charlie
opening
says so.
for unsafely. On the other hand, we need to make sure
I
that
could
you can pay.
very easily, off the top of my head, even tell you where we're staffed, where we'd like to be staffed, and where we have some gaps. So if you'd like me to send that out, or I can do whatever you need
Yeah,
to get
and that
that
gives us,
information.
and that way we can be like. You know, we can look at it and go, I don't know where you're gonna get that money and what does that look, I mean, right? I mean,
and I guess it seems like we can come into a pretty close range of where we may be.
Yeah.
Needing, and you know, I think as we get to the bottom, the last page on this where we've got cash flow, that was the question that was kind of coming to mind for me. Is at what point with the current operations and expenses and income, where do we get to the, oh my God, moments that we've heard plenty of agencies come to in the last year? And
that's what we're gonna work on those projections.
well, and it looks, so I'll just run this by real quickly, just as a reference. So on that last page, it's saying, as I understand it, that we started the year with about $1 million in cash and equivalent. We ended June with about $800,000. So we had about a cash deficit in that period of 236. So if we extend that to the end of, if all things stay the same, if we don't make any changes from what we've got going on right now, the end of December, our cash rate should be about 570,000. So, 400 less than we started the year, 400,000 less than we started the year with. So about a 30,000 per month negative cash flow situation. And we also then believe that we're gonna see a reduction from the city of about 30,000 starting January 1.
per month, per month,
Per month.
yeah, that's he's talking.
So,
Yeah.
those pictures, basically, when I put all these together and I look at those movements through our existing operation, it tells me that by the time we get to the end of March, or somewhere right around that time frame, we're gonna be in a cash situation where we have less than 1 month's worth of operating expenses available to us, and that's where we get really vulnerable to a delay in a payment. You know, like we had last spring, you know, if we're already drawing down that tight and we don't get that payment in the first quarter, then I'm not sure that our line of credit is gonna cover what we need to cover in that process. So, you know, those are the points, I guess, that I see from this picture that we have here.
Right, and you're dead on. Forecasted balance, the nice thing about Zero is that they've got a beta version of their cash flow forecast that I ran, this morning based on, information that's in through yesterday. And, forecasted balance as on January 20th, considering our current bi-weekly payroll averages and, the remaining payments, to finish up Count Village, and again, kind of factoring in some of the spending trends that we've had this year, it's forecasting that we'll right around exactly what you said, right around that $500,000. The projection is that we will end the year above zero. It said somewhere between like 0 and 50,000 net profit for the year, which is pretty decent. And that's also considering their monthly recurring payments from Douglas County and our last payment in Q4 from the city. I've tried to put in what I know so far. Of course, as you mentioned, there's a lot of things that we can't anticipate. We are also figuring out ways to save money. And so we're coming up with a plan to help mitigate some of these issues and concerns, because we share those same concerns with you.
Yeah, I guess I feel like at this point, we are at a stage in the process where we can make modifications.
Oh, yes.
Make adjustments, and it doesn't have to be crisis management.
Right. And I mean, I will admit that there for a second, I was panicking. I felt pressure to feel more panicked about our situation. But I don't feel that way at all anymore. I feel like we've got this. I feel like James and I are coming up with some really great plans. Our executive team is working on ways to help mitigate spending. You know, today we formed Shelter KC, and they have some ideas for us too. And so just kind of reaching out, seeing what resources are available to us in the community, not just, you know, staying in our bubble here, you know, what are other organizations doing? And, you know, I think that's been really important. The other thing that I learned is some resources that are available to us from our Nonprofit Connect membership. I attended a meeting earlier this month and learned of a trauma-informed class availability to us, of a free introduction class to that's available, that's made available to everybody. So I think those kinds of things are invaluable, to being able to look into what's available to us for free, and also some other resources that we can get. I'm really invested in this and think that we're gonna be okay. I don't think it's as dire of a situation as it was at the end of 2023. And I know we talked about that a lot, but because it's still kind of recent, but yeah.
Can I just clarify, so moving back, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's okay.
So moving back on what you're asking me as far as staffing.
Right.
So I wanna make sure that I'm aware of exactly what you want. So I can send you very easily, first thing tomorrow, where we are with staffing right now. And include, okay, so here's where we are, and here's the vacant spots that we are backfilling, not new spots at all, because we put a hold on that. But what we are having to backfill in order to get just bare minimum of staff right now. and then look at that. Because right now, between Michelle and I, we're covering a lot of shifts because of students leaving and I mean, and then we've got some strategies of how to have staff pick up different shifts and kind of combine shifts. So we have a strategy for that and I can very easily give you that information. Is that what you're?
Right, because
asking for?
eventually, we have to look at it and go, okay, right now, we think we got through March, but as we staff up.
But
We're
that's the
looking at
thing,
it,
we're not staffing up.
Right.
We're staffing based on our budgeted positions, and that's what we were trying to explain is that when we're hiring, we're not going over what we budgeted for this year in staff. I know we have to look at where we can trim, but staff is not the trimming point. We can't trim staff.
But I guess the thing that I'm concerned about in that is that that budgeted amount was based on revenue that we're currently believing is $600,000 in arrears. You know, I mean, if we look at our revenue, saying that for the first 6 months, our revenue is $290,000 less than we had budgeted. If we hold on to salary budget expense and not recognize that we've lost, you know, $600,000 in revenue, that's not gonna put us in a good spot.
Well,
by
what,
the year.
another thing that won't put us in a good spot is we continue with all these expansions and we have less staff. So we're talking different things and different concerns, but they're all equally concerning. But one thing, when we talk about staffing, we're talking about the safety of our staff and the people that we serve. So we can't compromise on the staffing at this point. So something else has to be a compromise, and that's what we're gonna look at to see how close we can get to that. 'Cause I hear what you're saying, but because we're not getting the revenue that we budgeted for, staff is not the thing to cut, because that will put everything at risk. That's why we have the presentation to talk about best practice with the population we serve. And so I think we are gonna have more conversation, and we're gonna look at, as you can see, we are coming under budget for what we have. If we were having the revenues that we projected, we're doing a good job as far as what we're supposed to be doing. We're gonna do a better job, because we're gonna start looking at it, but we're not starting with staff yet.
and I don't necessarily think we're saying you need to start with staff. I think we're saying. You can't just staff to what you were budgeted if our actual receivables are less than that.
Yeah.
I totally get your point that staff is the last thing you wanna cut. So to meet that, the cuts have to come from somewhere else.
Right.
And that's what we're saying, where is that?
Where's that gonna be?
What does that look like?
And we're starting to develop that. So I think we still have to do what we have to do to get those numbers, and then we come back and look at where we're at. And if we have to do more, we have to do more. But I want to emphasize that it can't be staff at this point. And it's important that we do everything else before we do staff, because of the work that we do and the people that we serve. It can't be staff right now.
So when we say in that vein, and the people we serve, we're really talking about the number of people, right? Because the
Right.
staffing is connected.
Right.
The staffing requirements, best
Right.
practices, so on and so forth, as your presentation pointed out. The number of staffing is connected to those numbers. And maybe this is an elephant in the room, but it also needs to be said.
Yeah.
If push comes to shove, that the revenue simply is not going to be there. Now, we'll do our very best to mitigate that in a number of different ways. But at the end of the day, if the revenue's not there and the staffing has to be, because there's nothing else left that's going to reduce things significantly enough, then the numbers would have to be reduced.
Right,
To
there you
stay-
go, there you go,
to
right,
stay
that's
safe.
what I'm saying, and I,
To
and I.
keep
there you go.
best practices fully in play, because those should be the priorities.
Right,
I think that should be the goal. I'm not naive enough to think that we're gonna reach that goal. But I do think in looking at the way that we budgeted for staff, Mercedes and I have been looking at, we counted staff, even if they were part-time, as the number of staff is. So combining some of those to make full-time FTEs will not, it will change the way we budget it. It won't be counting the number of staff. It will be the staff that we actually need to cover shifts. And does that make sense a little bit more? Cause before we're budgeting part-time, and when you look at the total number of staff we should have, that includes PRN, it includes part-time. Some of that is just not realistic and doesn't make sense necessarily for implementation. And so I think in looking at that, I think we can do a better job at forecasting there.
and I would say that's existing from the model that started when I started, that model that was in place when I started. And there's a lot of factors to why that model could not change. One, because of the union, we couldn't just start changing positions, so we have to change as we can. And so that's what Kim started about. We've been talking about this for quite a while. How do we get, because the pattern or the staffing that we have is not ideal for what we want. And it's inconsistent. So there's no consistency with shifts, times of shifts, people coming on. So we're trying to get there, but we can't just do that like we would if we didn't have a union, because there's protocols that we have to follow.
And I can.
And it's important that we do that.
What I'm hearing you say, John, forgive me if I'm getting this tangled up, is that we don't want to cut the established staffing ratios that we believe are ultimately
Best practices.
responsible for signal.
Because it is.
Close.
But if we don't have the revenue to staff at a particular level, we have to look at drawing down the guest count. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I would like to think that would be the last thing we would consider doing. But if we're going to, I mean, it's pretty simple math, really, and I stink at math, but you know, we've kind of laid it out.
It is.
The revenue has to be in keeping with the staff required to serve X number of people,
Yes.
period.
And at
Right?
the same time, we have a contract with the city that I believe stipulates that we have to serve X amount of capacity. And if for some reason we draw below that capacity, does that jeopardize the basis for our main funding?
I'd like to speak to that.
Go ahead, Misty.
So while like for example, the direct care staff, we're saying net best practice is 15. Is that what?
Yes, I bumped it up to 20 just to like.
Yeah. So National Alliance to End Homelessness best practice is actually a range of 15 to 25. Case managers, the same 20 to 25. So it's a range, and I think we're just looking at the low end of the range. So, you know, what should happen is that, you know, if we're looking at having to cut money, then we should go to the high end and not at the very lowest expectation. And then that would help stretch staff. I mean, honestly, working in the mental health centers, 25 for a caseload at a mental health center is pretty low. And to think about, a lot of these folks have several case managers. So, you know, I'm over here making notes about, you know, like, how do we work better together and split the work? Because, once I've talked to my team, once we end chronic homelessness and there is no unsheltered individuals outdoors, then we will start embedding in places. So, like I have 3 case managers and we will still be, working for the same cause. So that, we will be standing in the gaps as well. So I think I understand why
And
you're having the
we're also working
conversation.
on, some other plans, to generate some funding, and things like that. We'll be ready to present some of that by next board meeting. Something pretty positive, I believe, so.
Misty, did you have more to say?
No, that's pretty much it. I,
Okay.
we can definitely look at the different ranges that are reasonable without overtaxing a staff member.
Right.
So I'm just looking over my notes, and I feel like there are maybe some follow-up items that would be helpful for the whole board to have access to. Kim, the presentation you gave tonight, would you mind sharing that out with the whole board?
Sure.
And then you mentioned some staffing data that you could also send as a follow-up.
I certainly can. I will send what we have, including the positions that we're backfilling. We are
Okay.
not adding, and I wanna make sure that I stress that, any additional positions right now. I'm just trying to get us back to baseline of where we have lost staff. And, we've had schedule changes. We're not moving anybody directly to relief because we don't need that, but we do need to backfill that position. And so where we had, for instance, 4 in a morning shift, we now have possibly 3 or 2, and we're backfilling those positions. So it should not affect the budget in any way, except get us back to mark.
Okay.
And I think,
In addition to those 2 items, this reference to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, it sounds as if there's perhaps a resource that you guys, Misty included, are using kind of to provide guidance. And is that something you could also share with the whole board?
I can, I mean, it's research from that. I can send out the information from the Alliance to End Homelessness. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I think it
Misty-
just sounds like there's, it just might be
Right.
helpful or educational for our board to understand it.
Middle of the range on some of this and bumped it up, but we are, if you looked at the best practice and what we're using right now and what I consider okay to continue, if we can get back to that point, is gonna be less than what best practice says. And that's just reality, but I think being able to compare what best practice looks like and then where we are and the outcomes we're getting is really important. So, did I make a clear point?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the only other item I had is just if there is a way to understand our staffing levels, not relative, or in addition to the relative to the best practice, if there's any benchmarking data that possibly is available, just to understand, like, as the industry staffs, what's common? Are we even within that, that range?
Okay.
I understand a lot of professional associations will develop best practices as a tool for advocating for greater resources. So I want to kind of have an understanding of what's the reality though in the industry. Like people would typically have to staff at a certain level based on resources, not based on best practice.
And I think when we look at the way that the staffing was budgeted for this year, that we need to look at possibly doing that differently to be able to benchmark that. Because, I mean, I don't know, when I heard we had 67 positions, well, I don't need that many part-time, I need full-time positions. So if I'm having to count it by people, that's not really covering what I actually need. So there's a way in which we can budget that I think will be much more on mark and keep us where we don't feel like we're.
I mean, I think there's
Yeah,
room from improving next year.
Yeah, I think,
yeah, I would definitely think we're budgeting FTEs, not headcount.
yes, I mean, we were budgeting head count, not FTEs. And so, for instance, I mean, James, you
Yeah,
could talk to this more,
well,
but we can cover it next
we-
time. Why don't I get you the data that you're asking for? And then I can field any questions regarding that, so that I don't get off track
And Charlie, that was the reason that it was heads because there was no rhyme or reason to what a part-time, how many hours they worked, a standard of that. It was all over the place. And so we had to do one before we could do the other. And so that's what Kim and Mercedes, I've asked them to do that months ago, to start looking at how do we incorporate and offer different positions so we can get to some standards. So it's not just some people work 2 hours or 5 hours or what the minimum is, and
or 30.
it's all over the place. So we have to get to that point. And when we're talking about positions and people with the union, we can't just make people do it. We have to say, this is what we have. Are you willing to? And so some of those people had to fall off when they went back. And so we're not even, people are wanting to say, I want to go relief. We're saying, no, we have this position for you, but we don't want you to go relief. And then when we have enough of those, we rehire someone either at a part-time position or full-time, not those intermediate positions. So it's been a really struggle. So we did have to start counting heads because we had to make sense of the rationale behind that. It was just placing bodies in positions to have people on staff to do that. And so we had to figure out how do we do that systematically so we didn't really upset things. And still, in good faith with the union, do a good job at doing that where we weren't, where it didn't seem like we were trying to just push people out. We just didn't do that. So it's been interesting.
It was the most interesting way of counting staff that I've
It
ever.
continues to be
I've
interesting,
ever
but,
run a,
yeah,
so,
but we're working at it.
yeah.
Is there
And
is there anything else from other board members that you'd like sent as follow-up to this discussion? Okay. Karen, I know we sort of hijacked your report. Is there anything else well, it's kind of related, right? About three quarters of our budget is personnel.
It's
Is there anything
definitely
else?
really, and on the payroll section, just so that we're clear here, we're under, we're under budget by 184,000 through the end of June. And that's primarily because we had people leaving and us not hiring new positions, but just trying to backfill and work with the unusual system that was in place previously. We've gone through tremendous change over the last 18 months. And so, you know, I'm thankful for your all patience with us, especially me in this process of trying to get you really helpful financial reports. But as I mentioned before, I think we're starting to get some really good data, like at least from my end, seeing, okay, this is how we can put things together and make a clear picture of how things are going, where the money is coming from. Again, I can say this until I'm blue in our face, in my face, that, you know, we really need to get fundraising efforts off the ground in this quarter or next quarter. Most of our private donations come in the third and fourth quarter. When I was getting the information in for 2024 and compiling that for our historical purposes, I saw an uptick in August. More donations starting to come in, and then of course Christmas season, we got like that's the heavy hitter where we're gonna get most of our private donations. But I would like to sit down with our executive team and put together a plan for our summer appeal to go out And then I know that there's whispers on the horizon of potential fundraising event coming up.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do a lot of that. coming
Yeah, we're
up.
doing a
But
lot.
You won't need.
Right, I know.
So, and the other thing that I would like is, and I don't know how often you do it, but for the next meeting, can we get the census to date by month? Here's how many were in thirties, here's nineties, right?
Everybody should have access to the board share drive, and that's where that data lands, so it's all in there. You have access to it.
Oh, and why is it, just attach it to the board packet, I don't have to go, right?
No,
It's in the quarterly.
it's on there in the share drive.
Correct.
Yeah, but it could be in what you're saying,
You wanted
Get it
to develop this.
because it's pretty,
Yeah.
it's currently developed as a week by week
Mhm.
report, right?
Mhm.
And so if, yeah, at a board meeting, we would get the previous.
I would have presented that today, but I asked him to come to do
Yeah,
that, but
I'm just saying,
because I
you
know,
still attach it to,
okay.
Yeah.
You wanted to attach
so when
to,
I'm looking at everything, I'm
Yeah, I
going,
just-
it's
I
all
know.
this, and this, and I.
you want me to make it easy for you.
Well, I think one way we can help with that, Karen, in executive committee, we've talked a little bit about adding financial notes. And,
The notes work.
yeah,
Okay,
so
yeah.
one of the things that would be useful in the financial notes is reference to our census.
Okay.
Similar to, it would also be useful to know what our calculated FTE is for that month.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like there are
In
just
the note.
certain data points that'd be helpful, and I think they're relevant to understanding our finances.
Sure.
Okay, is there anything else on the financial report?
Note the Douglas County Community Foundation endowment fund statements on the last page. That went up slightly by I think $2,000, but that's it. Do you all have any other questions for this still work in process financial report?
So the community foundation, I had reached out to them on behalf of the fundraising committee to kind of inquire about the Making the Ask workshop. And Heather wrote me back to say that she just had a conversation with you all about this, and that so I kind of wanted to kind of ask, do you want to discuss that now, or do you want to put that in the fundraising committee? Because the fundraising committee hasn't really engaged the community foundation.
Well,
That might make more
what
sense.
I think she wanted to know how many board members you wanted to attend that. And she said normally it was the ED and one board member.
Okay.
But she said, what she specifically said is that she probably wouldn't turn people away if there was space for people to come. And she knows how important that is for us at this time. But I think she said she was gonna reach out to you.
Yeah, she did. I just was wondering if this is where exactly we want to have that conversation tonight.
That's up to you.
Okay. I'd like to just put it in there now then, because what I understand it's a workshop that goes from 10 o'clock to 3:30. It's pretty much a full day workshop, and it's the Friday, August 22nd. And I think what we
Yep.
just need to know is if there are other board members, I'm planning to attend it, but I also wanted to open it up to other board members. So if it's something that you have an interest in participating in,
I would like to participate.
okay. And you don't have to make the decision tonight, but I wasn't really sure if there was a flyer or anything we could send out. Anyone? James, did Heather say anything about that?
Well, say that again, Charlie. I'm
Is
sorry.
there a flyer or some other sort of invitation material?
I think whatever
Just what
she sent
me?
you. I
Okay,
didn't have any.
I'll share that invitation material that I got from her with the whole board. And for now, we'll just have me and Chaconi, and if anybody else wants to do this, we'll just have to tell the community foundation. Okay. Next on our agenda is the executive committee report, and let me put back on our screen at least the agenda. Okay. So primarily, executive committee has been discussing our financial needs, like in terms of if we need to, like how we can get the statements ready. And obviously we've seen tonight, it's almost there, but maybe not quite all the way there. The three kind of discussion points for how we're going to try to address our financial situation are, we've kind of mostly been brainstorming. I think we'll have more to present to the whole board next month. But one of those items is really what are the areas of expenses that we can cut? Second area is obviously what can we do to increase revenue? But the third one I just want to introduce in this, but we're not really ready to probably have much discussion, is there any way we can strategically use the equity that we have in order to think about making long-term adjustments to the shelter operations? And by equity, what I mean is the equity in the facilities. So our fixed assets. We have a mortgage already with the city of Lawrence, but the property itself is worth significantly more than the lien that's on the property. So there's some discussion about how we might be really strategic about using some of that equity to address kind of operational issues, but also thinking about investing for the future that would help us with situating the shelter to be in a better position to be financially stable or sustainable in the future. So just want to put those three things on everyone's kind of radar. And then also related to the financial work, we've asked that the executive committee for now be given access to the Zero accounting software, read-only access, so that we're able to at least have a little more transparency around the finances. And if this it goes well, then the goal would be that everybody on the board would be able to have that sort of access. And you might recall after last month's meeting, we had or before last month's meeting, we did give everyone access to Every Action, which is the donor or donations management platform. So the goal here being that all board members should feel like they have access to the financial information being used to make decisions. Other than that, we've had some discussion about preparing ourselves to do the budget for next year, knowing that we're likely going to have to figure out how to make more cuts in expenses. And I think that's it about the finances. A lot of our discussion has been around the Pallet 24 project, just trying to keep updated on where that's at, progress being made. There's been some discussion about sort of how do we ensure that we're compliant with the city contract that requires that we serve only residents of the county, and that we can validate that through proper documentation. And that's been a discussion we've had some time ago, but it kind of was brought back up. And so internally, James is committed that they're working on a kind of an internal review to see where we're at with being able to demonstrate documentation of that requirement. And then obviously we worked on the bylaws revision. And I think that's it. Christina or Chuck, do you have anything else that I might have missed?
No, you've covered everything that I can have in my notes to recall. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the advisory committee report. Is there anything to report?
We do not have anything to report on the advisory committee to report today. And so that still is a to be had conversation. James and I do have a few meetings in common, one specifically that talks about some of the things about bringing folks into the conversations and having more lived experiences in the spaces of our sexual violence prevention education group. And so that's not the group, or that is not the advisory group that we are talking about now. That is a conversation that introduces more lived experiences and more people into the leadership position at the Lawrence Community Shelter.
Okay, thanks, Christina. Next item on our agenda is the fundraising committee report. For this, I'll just say, I know at the last meeting, we kind of gave an overview of the activities of the committee and all the things we've considered. Since that meeting, the fundraising committee has met twice, or sorry, maybe 3 times, and narrowed in on one particular proposal we wanted to present tonight. And for that, I'm going to kick it over to John. And John, just to give you kind of a sense of our time, we still need to work on the bylaws amendment. So
How much time do I have?
let's try to, maybe if everybody can stay a little longer, we can maybe give you 10 minutes.
Can't stay past 8. And we gotta save time for the 2 announcements that we can't talk during.
We have announcements?
Oh, the library overhead announcement.
No, not in the minute. I'm looking, it's coming up.
Alright. Real quick, so I assume, Charlie, you want me to talk about the meeting specifically we had Monday and
Yes.
the discussion thereof.
Yep. I think our hope tonight is we can get approval from the whole board to move forward with the gala.
Okay, all right. So you've heard me in particular at some of these meetings when we're talking about fundraising, refer to the possibility of hosting a gala, a fundraising gala. And I've kind of shared bits and pieces of the experiences that I've had in recent years. Those recent years would be the last probably 8 or 10 in particular. And when we talk about what are other organizations doing, it's really in that category that we're making reference here. Well, what several other organizations are doing and have done is put together a big fundraising gala. My perspective of this really stems from 2 things. One, being personally involved in 3 different organizations doing this. One in particular, the Ballard Center, doing it now for the last 8 years. Before that, it was Big Brothers Big Sisters, and just this last year, in addition to Ballard Center, I was involved in a very first one for this organization called Hub Argentine. And where I'm going with this is both as a participant in these on some level, and mostly as a spectator. Always, I've seen the possibility that comes from this, not the guarantee that comes from this, but the possibility. So just to give you a couple of examples, when Ballard had their very first one 8 years ago, they raised $70,000. There was probably 100 people in the room. The most recent one we had in June, a little over $500,000, and there was 440 people in the room. The 2 years prior to that exceeded $400,000 each one of them. So it's something that can be very helpful early, no doubt. $70,000 came in pretty handy to Ballard Center 8 years ago. Maybe not as handy as $500,000, but handy nonetheless. So I don't want to paint a picture that if we do this thing, there's going to be right from the get-go several $100,000. Now, does that possibility exist? Truthful, technically it does. Hub Argentine had their very first one They've only been around for 4 years. They had their very first one in January, and we raised $300,000 that night. So technically, anything is possible, but I don't wanna, I don't wanna set the bar too high here. The main point is that it is a mechanism that can raise a significant amount of money in an evening. And it's also a mechanism that over time continues to raise money because the experience that the guests have becomes an experience where they not only want to give that night, but many of them end up wanting to associate themselves with this cause and with this organization ongoing. And some of that shows up in more checks down the road, and some of that shows up in just donating services and donating time. But so there's very positive repercussions that I have seen come from these things. The main point that I want to make, though, the common denominator of all of those, for me, the common denominator was that they were directed by a specific individual who is very steadfast that if you're going to do one of these, this is the plan, and this is the program, and this is the way everything is done according to that plan. And if you will do that, this can be, if not to some degree, will be the result. That individual is Becky Price. We've talked about Becky a bit in here already. We met with her in earnest last Monday evening. So it was James and Ciccone and myself, Charlie and Megan met with her and just kind of got her firsthand, side of the story. Don't want to elaborate on anything other than I have personally seen, experienced, and participated in every one of these that she directed from the get-go, and the results have been outstanding. She is willing to help us put this together for free. There's no costs associated with her participation. She's willing to help us from start to finish, put this thing together. I can tell you she'll be willing to participate in the event that night. But in essence, here's the deal. The plan is that we would have tables in a venue. When we talked about what some of the potential venues are. Our goal for this one would be to have 150 people in the room. That would be our goal. That would basically mean 15 tables, 10 people at a table. Each one of those tables are sponsored by either a local business, or they're sponsored by one of us. They're sponsored by an individual. The sponsors buy the table. I will say nominally, today's rates, nominally, each one of those tables probably costs about $1,250. That's what the Ballard tables cost. That's what the Hub Argentines cost. And by sponsoring a table and then inviting guests to join you at that table, obviously, and Becky will talk about this a lot, you want to invite the right people, because the expectation will be that with the right people in the room, more and more and more money will come out of that room. The program itself basically is to have one of our guests share their story that pertains to their life, their life's experience, and most importantly, their experience being at Lawrence Community Shelter for a period of time, to compellingly share their story. Then to have James compellingly share his. That's what gets people excited, because first and foremost, it informs them very well of what's going on today at the Lawrence Community Shelter, and subsequently why donating to the Lawrence Community Shelter is the right thing to do and is a good thing to do. That's basically the program. The auction itself, or the auctioning itself, where the money actually comes from, shows up in three ways. First and foremost, the part of it that is called Fund a Need. If you can imagine, everybody in the room has a paddle with a number on it. That number is associated with them. And the Fund a Need auctioning part is simply about having categories of giving. The example of Ballard is there's a $10,000 category, there's a 5,000, there's a 2,500, there's 1,000, there's a 500, there's 100. And we say when we're at the $10,000 category, what $10,000 can do for this organization. Who's in? And people start raising their paddles. And then we move to 5, same thing. We move to 2,500 and so on. The Fund a Need part of it is the biggest part of it. They're not getting anything in return for what they have just purchased. They know that they are helping fund the need that this organization has. That part, by the way, that part at Ballard's in June, just that part was $380,000. That's how big a deal that part is. That would be followed by a pretty brief live auction, 4 or 5, maybe 6 things. Those things show up as got a donated pair of front row tickets to a KU basketball game, got dinner for 10 at this venue prepared by such and such a chef, got this weekend at, for 24 people, that type of thing, which are of course all donated by the different entities that are offering those things up. That's the live auction is 20 minutes long, but it brought in $70,000. And then there's a silent auction. The whole thing would start at 5:30 in the evening. The doors would open, dinner catered, good meal. That's important. Catered starts at 6, I think. The program itself starts at 7. I was home at 9:45, so it doesn't take a long time to get through that. The last thing I'll say is we talked about dates, timing, how long does this take to do right and to do well? And yet we need it. We need the results of it sooner as opposed to later.
Attention library patrons,
Here
the
we
time
go.
is 7:30 and the library is closing at 8 p.m. We ask any patron needing a library card to come to the accounts desk immediately, since we will stop issuing new cards in 15 minutes. Any children or teens needing help calling for a ride home should go to the children's desk now. Thank you.
We're just preliminarily looking at dates and right now we're kind of targeting November 7th, which is a Friday night. Becky, by the way, feels pretty strongly that Friday nights are best. If we did do it on a Saturday night, perhaps November 8th. None of that is cast in stone right now, but that gets it done yet this year. It gets it done ahead of Thanksgiving, Christmas, holidays. And yet it still would only give us basically 3 months to make these preparations. Final point, in case it's a question, we asked Becky, so how long will this take if we choose to do it right, to do it well? And she said, we could do it in 3 months, but that would be pushing it. But we can do it in 3 months. Obviously, if we're gonna do this thing, we need to decide pretty quickly that we're gonna do this thing and get the ball rolling. So, Charlie, I'll leave it at that. That was longer than you probably wanted me to take, but, question.
Yeah, thank you for going over the proposal. I guess what we'd like is to just get the board's agreement that this is the right path to go on. I don't know if we want to put a motion on the table so we can have some more discussion about it. John, do you want to throw out a motion?
Sure.
I don't think we need to have the details on the specific date, but we want to know that the board's in favor of kind of following down this path.
Obviously, we can't take really any further steps from here down this road unless we know we're doing it, so.
Yep.
How would that motion look? Make a motion that
That we, that we plan and execute a gala.
hosting a
Using Becky
gala
Price.
may entail.
Second,
All right, what questions do we have? It will take a lot of work. I'll tell you right now, it's not gonna take a tremendous amount of work from this board. Mostly staff. James knows this. James was part of the meeting. He heard, that
and
he's.
I'm assuming he's good with it? There he
Yeah,
is.
James, you in favor of having a gala?
Sure,
All right.
You want it?
dress up and I get to. talk
That
about what
was my first
we're doing.
question, do I have to wear heels?
I mean, I did follow up with Becky, and I have a meeting with her tomorrow, actually, at 1:00. So I like the model. I like what I heard because it's all about fundraising, and that's what we need to do. I know I've seen fundraising. I know us trying to figure out how to do that. We were intertwining our hearts with our heads, and it doesn't work. Doesn't work well. It can work, but it doesn't work well. When I heard the presentation from Becky, it made me think this is what it's about, and it has to be only about that. And so I am down for that.
I wanna point out though, that this doesn't circumvent.
No,
In any way, shape or form.
not at all.
Any
Not at all.
other fundraising projects, activities, deals, getting $1,600 is important.
We're gonna keep doing
Yeah,
that.
getting $3,000 is important. But I don't know what else any organization could do in one evening.
Right.
That brings this out. It does place the level of importance on the people that are invited. I mean, let's just be clear about this. I learned that the hard way myself. The very first one, I thought this is gonna be a fun party. And now I was new in Lawrence, didn't know a lot of people, so I invited 8 people that were my best friends at the time, and they didn't do jack tiddly. And the light bulb went off for me. The light bulb went off that the right people. Now, I also have a tremendous amount of recent years' experience that it doesn't mean signaling out people that have deep pockets.
Good.
It does mean signaling out people that have a huge heart. That's the most important thing. And that's what we've done. My wife and I have done, and I will tell you, we went from sponsoring 1 table at the Ballard to sponsoring 2 tables at the Ballard to this year sponsoring 3 tables at the Ballard, and they finished 1, 2, and 3 in terms of table giving. And we simply reached out to people that we knew were gonna have a heart for how important this is, and that's why the stories are so important. Now, they gotta be true.
We can have some very true.
They gotta be true. But they are, I mean, I know, and I'm passionate about this, not gayless, I'm passionate about Lawrence community.
Right, I know.
Okay, I know firsthand, the difference between what we're doing today and how we're doing it and what we were doing just 2 years ago. And certainly the time before that. And that difference is what the story has to tell. that message, because folks in Lawrence, this is the truth. I know what you think, I know what you've heard in the past, those things happen, but it's different now, and it's worth investing. It's worth investing, right? By the way, these things require a pretty strong MC. I might have experience with that at these things. And a very strong auctioneer, especially, and it doesn't have to be a real auctioneer, okay? But somebody that that gets the energy going in the room and keeps the energy going in the room. So those two things are very, very important. The rest is just execution, right? The right venue, the right food, quite a bit of wine,
Yes.
quite a bit of wine, maybe some beer.
Or,
They gotta be in the right mood,
that,
right?
All right,
So
are there
it-
any other questions, or are we ready to take a vote on the motion?
I'm ready to vote for it. This is Rebecca.
All right, let's take a vote. All in favor of the motion to commit ourselves to holding a gala, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Evan.
John, for presenting that. And the last thing on our agenda, well, maybe not exactly last, but next item on our agenda is under other business. It's the consider adopting the proposed July 2025 amendment to the bylaws that essentially would change the number of independent directors from 2 to 4. And I was going to go over the review that I drafted of the changes. Essentially, the board expands from a number of 7 directors to 9. And it would do that by increasing the number of independent directors from 2 to 4. The new structure would then have 3 directors appointed by the city of Lawrence, 2 by Douglas County, and then 4 that are appointed by the board. To allow for staggering in a rational manner, the directors would be assigned to one of 3 rotation groups, A, B, and C. Each group would then have a 3-year term. And then every group basically would, when it concludes its term, it would allow for us to have a kind of a expectation that every year we have 3 board members that would be up for reconsideration. There is on the end of your agenda a diagram or a little table that I put together kind of showing here's our current situation, and those in orange are the ones that have a term that ends this year. The yellow are the people that have a term that ends in 2026. And currently, the ones in green would be the ones that end in 2027. By changing the rotation or the way things are staggered, essentially the new independent directors will be added to that green section, or what I'm calling rotation group C. And so then we would know that every year, for example, this year, there would be 1 new independent director, a city director, and a county director. And then next year, we'd expect that same, 1 independent, 1 city, 1 county. And then we would expect 1 city and 2 independents. And finally, in addition to those substantive changes, there were several parts of the bylaws that were referencing kind of the transitional work that was done in 2023. And so that language was removed. For example, the independent directors specifically called out me and Rebecca. That language is no longer necessary. And the initial staggering of terms also becomes irrelevant. And then there was a duplication around the restriction on employment. It was in 2 sections, section 1 and section 3. And I just thought it was unnecessary. So I removed it from the section 3. And then there was a statement about an unanimous written consent from the previous board. That was actually never executed, and I just wanted to clean that out of the bylaws. So then I shared with everyone both the come on. Oops. That little black bar is getting in my way for Zoom. Okay, here we go. So then you should have all received a copy of basically the markup and a clean copy. And I guess that's all I need to present. Can I get a motion on adoption?
Let me ask, have we received any feedback from the city or county?
No. I didn't reach out to them to ask for any feedback though, just to say. I would say, you know, we always include Misty, Brandon, and Jill on the announcements, our meeting materials. They receive all that, and Jill is out of office. We did talk about, you know, we made the motion at the last meeting to refer this work over to the executive committee.
Right.
So
Okay.
I know they were aware that this was happening. And our intention was to not do anything that would kind of disrupt the majority kind of share, if you will. And it was motivated also by the understanding that the board composition has an impact on our capacity to do fundraising. And that was actually what kind of pushed us to do this in our discussions with Becky Price. She essentially led with board development and fundraising are kind of hand in hand. And we need to focus on recruiting people that are committed to doing the fundraising side. So this would be a way for us to add 2 positions to the board that we could, as a board, that we could go out there and recruit.
I agree with that.
I think it's a great idea, but these decisions are not made by me. These are made by the commissioners, and we haven't had an opportunity to talk with them yet. So I think that they need to be the ones to weigh in on that decision still.
Yeah, the bylaws are actually made by LCS.
The appointments.
The appointments. And I'm sure we could have more engagement with the city and the county if there's an interest in further revising this. But I think at this point, it's clear we need to have more board members.
Attention library patrons, the time is 7:45 and the library will be closing in 15 minutes. No new library cards will be issued tonight. Any children or teens needing help calling for a ride home should go to the children's desk now. Public computer sessions will end in 5 minutes. Please bring anything you plan to borrow to the nearest checkout station at this time. Thank you.
This is Rebecca. I just wanted to say, I think we've struggled with fundraising, and I think this is a good opportunity to expand the board to bring in more people that can help with fundraising. And I also know it's hard to get all 7 of us on a meeting. So while we're all here and we're all supportive of this change, I think it makes sense to have this vote now. And if we need to revisit it at another time, like if something needs to be changed again in the future, then the board can look at that at that point. But I think at this point, we're trying to have this gala. We need more support from the board. And so I'll be voting in favor. I guess we don't have the motion yet. I'll go ahead and make the motion if you'd accept it, Charlie.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I move that the board unanimously adopt the July 2025 amendment to the LCS bylaws as presented, increasing the number of independent directors from 2 to 4 and updating language related to the appointment and rotation of directors.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, was that John?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, John. is there any other discussion about the motion? Okay. Since this is unanimous, I'd like to kind of do it more like a roll call vote. Just to make sure we got everybody on record. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Let's start with Chakani. If you're in favor, say yes. If you're opposed, say nay.
Yes.
All right. Charlie, I'll say yes. Christina,
I will say yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Rebecca,
Yes.
and Shannon.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. You've done great work
Yeah.
on putting this together.
Okay. Misty, if there, please let us know if there's any, if this causes any trouble on the city or county side. I'll also just send a follow-up message to you and Jill about that. I think we're also happy to, go to the commissions if that's necessary to help explain or justify the revision to the bylaws. Or we'd be happy to provide them the updated bylaws just in a memo to them. Next on a list of just any other board member updates or other items. Anybody have anything? All right, then can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thanks. Is there a second? Who was the second?
Chuck.
Yep, thanks. All right, if there's no other discussion, all in favor of adjourning at 7:48 PM, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
But